Welcome to the Strong Life Podcast. This is your host, Zach Evanesh. And if you're new here, the Strong Life Podcast is where we talk about dominating in your strength training and taking those lessons and applying them to life. So welcome aboard. If you are a regular listener, welcome back. Make sure you're all subscribed to the newsletter, zachstrength.com. We have a question that came in today. I'm going to do a screen share for those of you who are watching on the YouTubes. And we had a question come in that was also posted to a comment on my YouTube channel. But I always say the best way to connect with me and to get your questions answered is through the newsletter. If you reply, it's very likely I'll catch them there. Sometimes through Instagram as well. And then if it needs serious attention, especially if it's a business question, you could sign up for a consultation, which is linked below. This question comes from Liam, and he asks, "Hi, Zach, I have a question about a prison workout I found on T Nation, the one where you were talking about the biggest guy in prison." Now, for those of you who need some context, I wrote this article, I believe, around 2006. And the way I've always described it is I took a sick day from teaching back in 2006. I was running the underground strength gym out of my two-car garage from home. I had the Underground Strength Academy. I had the online presence, and I wanted to learn how the inmates were training. I had seen a documentary on maybe A&E or, the biography channel about how inmates were training in California when the weight piles were removed. And I was very intrigued. And so I knew somebody who had a stepfather that was a lieutenant at the prison. This prison was East Jersey State Prison, also known as Rahway State Prison. It is where the movie Lockup was filmed with Sylvester Stallone. And so I took a sick day, and I often ask a follow-up question: how many strength coaches went to prison to learn about strength training? How many strength coaches who have a full-time job are taking sick days to attend seminars? The answer is not too many. Since the explosion of the internet and social media, lots of strength coaches just stay in the comfort of their own home, and they kind of try to learn only through YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. But if you want to learn, you need skin in the game, and you need to go attend events, or you have to go to prison like I did. And so Liam asks, how did the biggest guy in prison train? Was it 4 to 5 sets of 7 reps for most exercises? What I want to know is how many exercises he did for each muscle group. For example, Monday, he trained legs, Tuesday, chest and arms, etc. If you're unsure, can you give me your opinion? I would really appreciate it. Thank you, and keep up the good work. Liam, I've actually copied the article and I put it on the Zach Evanesh website. I've spoken about this before on the Strong Life Podcast. So what I want to encourage listeners into doing is to do their research and have skin in the game. I love to answer questions, but what gets a little bit heartbreaking is when you don't go to zachevanesh.com, use the search bar and type in business because you want to learn about the business of strength and conditioning. You don't type in prison strength because you want me to answer it exactly how. You don't respect the information when it's handed to you. And I know in the article, I broke down exactly how this man trained. Excuse me. I'm going to switch over to full screen. And I broke it down. He did one body part a day, Monday through Friday. It was a very high volume approach, very much like what you would read about in Arnold's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding. Then Saturday, he did 100 reps of all calisthenics, bodyweight exercises, pull-ups, push-ups, dips with the hands, behind either on a toilet bowl or on the bunk bed, bodyweight skull crushers. We used to call those head bangers if you were doing them against a pole. That exercise is inside bodybuilding.com. But he did a lot of, I don't recall the exact reps, but it was a lot of 5 sets. He knew exactly what weights he was using. And what's crazy is that was 2006, close to 20 years ago. Now I am of the age of a lot of those inmates. These guys were in their late 40s, early 50s. And I remember the former boxers who were running the lifers group, the Scared Straight program. They told me about doing 250 push-ups every morning before breakfast, 5 sets of 50. Then they would have some green tea before going out for breakfast. The big guy, he was really jacked. He looked like he was probably 275, 290, if I recall, 6'4", 6'5", maybe even bigger. He was doing, 5 sets of 5, 7 sets of 7. He had a high volume approach. He did a main lift, maybe a second main lift, and then a lot of supplemental. I remember him talking about doing seated alternate dumbbell curls with 100-pound dumbbells, or incline benching 275 and 315. And I remember the lieutenant telling me that when he was kind of in his younger years and he got into prison, he was already the biggest guy there. He had a bodybuilding and powerlifting background. And in those early days when he was in prison, they had a powerlifting team and they also had a boxing team. So the guys that were in the Scared Straight program were all on the boxing team and they favored calisthenics. This guy who was in the powerlifting team, he favored all the free weights. And I got a glimpse of what the weight pile looked like outside. I didn't get to go outside because the lieutenant said, if you go outside, they'll kill you. You don't get to go outside and commingle with the inmates. The lieutenant also showed me the old gymnasium that was located upstairs in the prison. It had beautiful old wooden floors. It was a full court basketball court. He showed me the area that used to house the boxing ring. And then all of the weights were welded together. I think they called that pig iron. And the powerlifter, he was with me, kind of giving me the tour. And he basically would use any of the machines in there and use all the weights. He would stack them. T-bar rows, all 45s. All the fixed barbells, he would do that for curling, military press, overhead tricep extensions. But that was kind of like a pump-up area. Training outside, the benches were not adjustable. They were made of cement. So flat bench made of cement, incline bench made of cement. The track that was built outside was donated by Sylvester Stallone. And the guys told me that one of the better boxers would oftentimes run a 400-meter forwards and then sprint the 400 meters with a back pedal. He would also have somebody hold his ankles and do 100 meters on his hands. So partner wheelbarrow, which we do a lot of that. Here's the follow-up question I have for Liam or anybody who thinks they could just blindly copy somebody else's workout. It doesn't seem to work best that way. You have to learn from others, and then you have to experiment with what works best for you. Now, sometimes we get motivated or inspired by the story behind somebody, like I've written about George, the strongest man of the YMCA. You might want to copy that, but eventually you must learn what works best for you. And what works best for you changes according to your age and where you are in your life, what time frame you are in your life, and also where it is during the year. For example, during November and December, I tend to program inside Gladiator Strong. That's my app under Train Heroic. A minimalist style of training because people are busy, they're stressed out. So I give them a shorter training, minimalist approach. It feeds not only the body, but also the mind. So you don't get stressed out missing your workouts. So if you want to try to do all that high volume, the question is, do you live a lifestyle that could support that training, where you could eat a lot, where you could catch a daily nap? Are you young and in your 20s, maybe your early 30s? I have done those volume styles training, and I did that at like a perfect time. I had spent, this was probably 12, 13 years ago. I helped Mark Devine create the 20X challenge. He had the Kokoro challenge, part of SEALFIT, which I believe was 50 or 60 hours of training to experience Navy SEAL style training. I believe it was the first of its kind before everybody else started creating Navy SEAL style programs. And I told Mark, listen, I don't think I even want to do a 50 or 60-hour challenge. I'm going to have to fly out 2 days in advance, and probably for a good 3 or 4 days after the event, I'm going to be a bit useless to my family and my business. What if you came out here and two of his coaches were good friends of mine, mentors of mine, Quattro Deuce and Brad McLeod? And I said, what if Quattro Deuce and Brad run the 20X challenge? We're right here near the beach. And I took 6 months to prepare for that challenge. And it was often 2 workouts a day. One of those workouts was rucking. And if I was rucking, I implemented calisthenics during the ruck. So I might ruck a mile. Then I might carry my ruck overhead for 100 to 200 meters. Then I might do 20 thrusters, put the ruck back on. Then I'm get to a certain point and I'm doing 20 squats, 20 push-ups. So I was doing multiple, training sessions a day, 2 a day. And then I would do things like before I get into the shower, I would do 50 push-ups on the bathroom floor, or I'd lay down. Maybe I'm putting the iron on, ironing my kids' clothes. And while the iron is heating up, I might do 100 to 200 4-count flutter kicks. My whole day revolved around training. I would wake up and do that CrossFit workout called Cindy, which is 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 squats. I would do 5 rounds in my boxers. And so all throughout the day, training. After 6 months of that, with running and all these high rep workouts, I wanted to put on muscle, and I was eating a lot more. So I went into a high volume approach. I actually took that program and I turned it into a course. I do that often. It's inside undergroundstrengthcoach.com. That's the academy. And it's called the Volume Training Program. And it was a tough program with a lot of volume, and it helped me put on a lot of muscle, but it was the perfect timing after going through a 6-month phase of, I wouldn't even call it GPP, but it was really high level GPP. And so you want to know exactly how the inmates are training, exactly how this big guy was training. He was, no doubt about it, genetically gifted and genetically predisposed to handle that amount of training. And I think we need to be careful with being very, taking this blind approach to copying things, not just as an individual, but I say this even to the sport coaches out there who sometimes watch, 3, 4, 5 of their favorite people on Instagram, and they just take this mishmash and they throw it like paint getting thrown on the wall, and they just blindly throw it and have their athletes do this. And then they don't coach, right? They've got power cleans and jumps and single leg exercises and advanced things like band resisted sprints and contrast training, but it's in no specific order. The power cleans look sloppy. There's no understanding of why those exercises are there. This is why I have my certifications and I teach you how to assess, not just from a one-time assessment, but every training session, every exercise is an assessment. But I know I went off a little bit on a tangent. So back to the prison training, 1 body part a day, 15, 20, 25 sets total, Monday through Friday. So it was probably like legs, chest, back, shoulders, arms on Friday. Saturday, all calisthenics, 100 reps per exercise. Sunday, a day of rest. And I remember at that time, with him knowing exactly the weight he used, I remember thinking to myself, well, he's not really adding weight. He's not really progressing. It was like he got to this point where he was just he knew exactly what weights he was using. And it reminds me a bit about how I utilize and train the deadlift. I don't kill the deadlift, but most of the time I'm able to pull close to or 500 pounds if I utilize 315 to 405 and hit a couple doubles and triples. So when you're really pushing and maxing yourself out, when it's time to perform, you might be too beat up. So volume training is only something I would recommend in small phases, in like the deep off season for athletes when they're eating a lot and they don't have competition interfering with the training. So anything else you guys want to learn, You go to zachevnish.com, click that search button. What do you want to learn about? Business, type it in. Bodyweight bodybuilding, calisthenics, kettlebells, wrestling strength, football strength, in-season training, off-season training, strength coach business, mindset, you name it, type it in and you will find it. If you want links to all that information, it's all linked up below, from business consultation to different courses and products we have. And of course, training with me inside Train Heroic under the Gladiator Strong app. So that's it, team. I'll see you by replying to the newsletter. Go to zachstrength.com, get your free training courses, which have been upgraded. And that's it, team. I'm out of here. Keep crushing those 5-star reviews. Keep sharing with friends, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks again.